You seem frozen. Are you listening? Are you in? Your images are a little bit.
Yeah, no, we're live. It looks like you're YouTube.
Yeah, we are starting YouTube. Okay. I'm going to take the sound off from YouTube so I don't hear.
How is the sound? Is it feels good? Yeah.
Yeah. Good. Yeah. We're all in. Hi everyone. So we decided to talk about narcissism. First of all, who are we? My name is Pavita. I'm a Brazilian therapist, part of this fantastic team of Path of Love Brazil. And I'm here with Abigail Iquo Isuo, right? Did I say it right?
Perfect, Pavita.
Who's in England right now, and she's also a therapist and leader of the Path of Love, and Talib Tyler Fisher, who's originally from the US, but he lives in Brazil/Sweden, right now in Sweden. Hey, Talibs, you seem frozen. Are you there?
He looks a little frozen. He's live in Instagram, though. I think you're there.
Yeah, he just
he's in and out
from Zoom, but he's in Instagram. Do you hear us, Talib? Are you back?
No, I'm back, I think.
Okay, you're back.
Now I hear you.
Very good.
No.
Very good.
Yeah, I lost you for a second, but I think I'm here now.
Great. So yeah, we decided to talk about, because narcissism has been a topic very talked about. All of a sudden, everybody knows or has been in a relationship with somebody called narcissist. So maybe we start with considering, what is it that we're calling narcissist? How is it that we see what is called narcissism? Who wants to kick it off?
You want to kick us off, Talib?
Go for it. I'm with you.
You're with me, huh? So, I think we could go at it from a few angles. Of course, there's the clinical aspect. Of course, there is the spectrum that I think narcissism can be viewed from. So we have the mild, the moderate, the severe. Yeah. And perhaps if we look at it from a wounded or a traumatic, injured place where unmet needs in childhood have caused a particular maladaptive way of behaving, we then would look for certain symptoms like that of grandiosity and a sense of entitlement, a real need for attention and being special, and of course, a lack in empathy. So, but for me, when I'm working with it in the clinical setting, it can be, like I said, mild, moderate, or severe. But I think probably we see more that moderate place where people are really stuck in a need to inflate themselves and really go out there and seek attention. And sometimes it really is detrimental, because of course, if you end up in a relationship with a narcissist, which is often really painful, then you might kind of feel pretty seduced by some of the charismatic behaviors that a narcissist can display. And in that place, we are really looking at what has happened to that person where their unmet needs have left them in a place of really trying desperately to be special. I think we've lost Talib. Is it true?
Yeah, we did.
So there's different definitions for narcissism, but for a narcissist personality disorder, and then we can look at traits and tendencies, of which I think all of us at times have and display certain components. You know, in that healthy narcissistic way, we go through childhood, and actually as a child, it is about us. It is, you know, and it's necessary to really fall in love with ourselves, if you like. But if that is reflected back and mirrored back in a positive way, the child can move through that healthily and gets a healthy sense of itself. But I think when we're looking at it, we're looking at the tendencies of real emptiness. So we want to fill ourselves. And I think the narcissist is trying to escape from feeling shame, from feeling betrayed, from feeling really that deep wounded injury. So the behaviors in the personality are overinflated. And it's like a grabbing to really fulfill that wasn't met in childhood. So I guess I'm just kind of opening up the broadness of it, because actually fitting it into a box in this day and age doesn't quite fit. But the spectrum and that continuum is useful to observe from that everyday mild kind of, we all want validation. Who doesn't want to be special? To the arrogance that then really isn't self-reflective anymore, to the destructive part where you just go for what you want, and that's kind of lacking in empathy and really hurtful. Yeah. Maybe I open it a little also, Talib, for you to add in there.
No, I think that's a good description in a way, you know, and it's always like, I work a lot with couples, and to see, you know, it's like that when that narcissistic part is activated, you know, and where it's really that inability to sense the other in a way, you know, and it's like that inability to actually be in empathy with the other. And it's in so much the wound that plays out in that, you know, it's really something to actually even see that, because it's one thing to be, you know, it's like to see the tendency in all of us in that narcissistic part, you know, where that wound is activated, and that incapacity in that moment to feel the other. It's almost like the other is not really considered, and how that opens up also like that deep abandonment that comes with that also. And to see that kind of narcissistic tendency in all of us in a way, you know.
Yeah, so that was my next question. So would you both agree that we all have some level of narcissism, all of us neurotic creatures?
Absolutely.
Unless we're enlightened, I absolutely think so. I'm not enlightened, so I think I have to say yay. You know?
Yeah, as I think it's somehow it's touching to see that when we're in that part, you know, if we can take the judgment out of it, you know, and just look at when that part is actually activated, and to not be afraid of it in a way, just to say, wow, there's actually that part is there. I can see that in the way that in moments in the relationship, in the moment of where I'm not being seen, it gets activated. And I think it's somehow bringing a tenderness to that part, you know, in a way. And not being so much, I think we're afraid of saying, oh, I'm narcissistic. It means that there's something wrong with me, or that I should be, that I'm deficient, but actually there's a deep longing in that part of narcissism. I think it's important to sense that and not be afraid of that, to say, oh yeah, I have a part that's can be narcissistic, and it actually is more like a wounded place, that in some way that that part didn't get seen, like you're saying, Abi, or there's a certain even a developmental stage that didn't get really evolved in a way that plays out in the relationship, and it seeks to be healed. It seeks for that validation, or it seeks to be seen. It seeks out the missing need that was there. And I think that's important, because otherwise it just repeats again and again in the relationship if we judge it, or we look at it as something, oh, there's something wrong with me. when actually it can be like, we can joke and say that kind of narcissistic tendency, but it's actually quite a delicate wounded state that plays out.
Yeah.
And how to approach that without feeling wrong or feeling judged is delicate, because it can be very painful and destructive in a way when what it triggers inside.
It's a delicate dance, because I feel we walk that kind of tightrope of either overcompensating for it, it's an overt kind of need that goes out there and is really visible, that we need that attention, or there is that denial and a covert need that then goes and kind of seeks for attention in a passive way. There is something about that cliche that we do have to love ourselves in order to form healthy relationships, and just getting that kind of, real delicate balance, which will allow us to be able to have empathy for the other, really does mean that we have to fill our own cup to a certain degree. We do have to meet that care, compassion, and love for ourselves in order to be able to sustain relationships. So I do feel that underlying wound that is often arrested in us can actually be something that we are denying, or we are kind of teased about, so how do we really focus in and, like you say, Talib, put our hands up and say, hey, there's a wound in me that actually wasn't filled, and I need attention right now, whether it's from myself first, but also to allow myself to be vulnerable enough to express that. And that's, I think, the line between healthy narcissistic healing and a possibility of going down the narcissistic injury, where we act out.
I like to take the hook of what you were saying about we need to love ourselves, and we're mentioning this word self many times. And it seems that there's a kind of a distortion there, as is then maybe the narcissistic personality would be the one who loves themselves the most. But what is it that they really love? Is it the self? Is it who they truly are? Is it an image built around that wound to protect the very wound? And maybe there's a key in there for the very healing of it. Don't you think so? So what's your take on seeing the self? What is it that we're calling the self? And what is the true self? And what is the fakeness we build upon it?
So this is where I think it's really great maybe to bring in the work in Path of Love, right? That we have components in Path of Love that are dealing with the psychological side, therefore the adaptive behaviors, adaptive and maladaptive behaviors that have formed certain structures that create our personality. And then our spiritual side, which perhaps is that part of us which we're calling on some level our true nature, the essential qualities of who we are. And I think when we're working with two, which I find really fascinating, it is my passion to understand which part of, because we all need a personality. And I think the ego gets this hard rap, but that in the way we look at it, let's say in Path of Love, is an imitation of our true essential expression. So we have this image or personality that is grown from the need to survive, as opposed to that deeper true sense, which I often experience as substance. I just feel it in a knowing space. I'm not efforting. And so I think when we're narcissistic kind of injuries or wounds or expressions, we're looking at the difference between that part that is just efforting or needing to prove something. It's needing to survive. It's needing validation to say, hey, I'm okay, as opposed to a deeper part of a real essential kind of presence and courage and strength, which fills our being and actually is quite unefforting. It's effortless, if you like. So I think that's where I would make the differentiation.
Yeah. You want to go on that also, Talib?
Yeah, I'm just trying to, when I just sense it, you know, it's like that. It touches me in a way that kind of what happens with people in Path of Love, if we work with actually being seen in that gentle exposure of the incapacity to perceive our behaviors in the other, you know, like how our lack of empathy affects the other, and being actually mirrored in that. And I think that's such a healing movement for the narcissistic, because I think many times the narcissistic part of us, it missed that mirroring to actually see how are my behaviors affecting others, and how does that feed that pain of separation that I experience through that. And many times I feel that the narcissistic part in us, it missed that kind of emotional education. It missed a certain sense of, wow, how my lack of empathy affects others when I'm close with people, how that affects my relationships, how that affects the people that I care the most about. And many times the narcissistic, it's almost like it doesn't have that, it misses that reflection in a way. And it leaves the person kind of with that emptiness of not getting the right feedback to be able to feel that sense of self. And I think that that's a deep healing that happens in Path of Love, honestly, where there's a certain one hand being seen and another hand of seeing how we affect the other. And in that, something starts to click. It's almost like something comes out of a certain in an encapsulated kind of state of realizing, wow, I touch people, or I affect people, or my actions have a certain impact in people's lives. And many times I sense that narcissistic part, it's almost like it never really got that honest feedback in a way, and kind of stayed in a certain encapsulated state, which is quite painful. And it's almost that it's asking for that type of healthy confrontation in a way.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and healthy being seen, because it's also like what Abby said about not having been seen. And then when you feel that it's safe, that there's no charge of judgment coming toward you, that there's an openness and acceptance, and that there is an invitation for exposure and for you to meet the self, what is hidden under all these layers of masks and all that. And would you agree that we are living in a narcissistic culture, that the culture we live in is an invitation, is an encouragement for building defenses and for building masks and valuing the masks rather than what is hiding underneath the true self? Would you think so?
Yeah, I think in many ways our society teaches us to lie about who we really anyway, and what I need in order to get that confirmation as a man today, or you know, as a real person. And I think that's it's such a delicate orientation, like you're saying, Pavita, like what does it mean to have a real sense of self? what does it mean to have a really like a real sense of confidence in who I am? And I think today it's such a challenge of having an orientation of this is who I am, and this is what I need, and this is what I feel, and this is me authentic. Because there's so much of the social media or that sense of being what it is to perform well or to be aesthetic in the body or the image that I need to portray to get the love that I need. And I think that many of us are struggling with that identity. That's my sense today. I think a lot of people struggle with that sense of the need of belonging, the sense of needing to be seen in authenticity, and then having to play some role or some fake personality in order to be met. I think many of us struggle with that.
Yeah.
There is something, isn't there, about the myth that where narcissism comes from, that actually this little narcissist was actually stuck just looking at his own image in some pond or in the water. And I think there's just a nymph around that is called Echo that can only echo what he actually sees. So the reinforcement of what he believes is who he is literally this superficial image and outer layer. And I think in our life today, when social media is so the information and knowledge kind of input that we get, and that influence is quite something that we're really aching for likes and followers. And actually, therefore, we portray what actually is our socialized order. Like, this is what beauty is, this is what knowledge is. And it hurts me because it feels so superficial, but it reinforces something. It's almost like we look for the solutions, and the solutions become part of that engine, part of the actual problem that sustains it. And I think the beauty of coming together, for example, in our path of love situation, is that, yes, we recognize this piece, we recognize our image, but then we go into, and the universal pain, but the unique expression is really celebrated. And I think that's what gets missed when we're in the social media kind of platforms, that really it's all quick fix. It's there's no such thing as delayed gratification. It's instant. So you have to give your best side there and then. And actually, sometimes our real, true, essential selves is much more subtle, needs time, needs space. Yeah. And we just not given that, granted that in this fast social media. I mean, I'm in awe. How many times can you post, and how many likes? That's temporary. It just satisfies that, that moment. And then you got to come up with something else and something else and something else. And it's exhausting. And in that quality of the substantial is so lost.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Yeah. I thought it would be nice also to cover a little bit the part of the relationship, because a lot of, I'm sure that you also get in the clinic, is complaint about, I've been a victim of a relationship with a narcissist. So there's always this equation, which is a delicate one, because victim and perpetrator are both very much connected to this dual way of seeing life, when we integrate things, they're both in me always. And so I always have my part in creating the relationship, which doesn't neglect the part where there's a lot of suffering also in being in this situation. But both sides need some personal healing on this position that they take, if I'm understood, like being the victim or being the perpetrator, both, there's some alignment there to happen. So I don't know if you're having a lot of that, seeing a lot of that in the groups and in individual work, but how do you see this equation? How would we talk to people who are suffering from this being in a relationship with somebody with very strong narcissistic traits.
You know,
Yeah, it's a go ahead.
Go, Talib. No, go ahead. Go ahead.
I think it's a delicate, a very delicate situation, you know. It's like how to have boundaries and the dependency that comes there of really where we get caught, you know. What is the hook that keeps the one who stays in a relationship where it's narcissistic, you know? And it's like, what is the fear of leaving that relationship? What is the seduction that happens that keeps us in a situation like that, where we're not getting seen really, or not being considered, where we don't, such a deep abandonment, you know? It's like in one way, there's such a like a trauma vortex that plays out, in that we're the one who stays just being rejected all the time and getting in putting into a like a very deep shame trance, where it's just like, I'm never enough, it's never good enough, and somehow that paralyzes a certain capacity of mobilizing for getting out of that. And I think that's very challenging. When you're in that, it's one thing to say, oh yeah, you should just leave, but actually it's really something when you're emotionally tied to somebody who you love and you hope that they could be different, and they just don't see you, and how painful that is, and how it is to actually be in that when you're in it. And I think yeah.
It's powerful. It's really powerful. It brings up such a lot when you touch on the different pieces, Talib. Because sometimes when I run trainings and we kind of, you know, interplay with narcissism and psychopath, so we're looking at the extremes of it. I often say, if you put a narcissist in a room of 3,000, 5,000 people, they will gravitate to particular characteristics in an individual. It's almost like they know exactly what to seek out. And so it's like the victim needs a perpetrator. I'm calling it a victim, but on some level, there's an unhealing in all of us, and certain puzzles fit together like a glove. And the narcissist with the partner that they detect is really, it's quite magnetic. And from, you know, and as soon as you're kind of in that magnetism, something plays out. Of course, narcissists can be incredibly charismatic. They can be seductive. They're controlling. They're dominating. And the partner often wants that in their life on some level, not from a sadistic point of view per se, but sometimes because actually it takes some responsibility off, makes you feel magnetic yourself. You feel special, and you get hooked into something before you know it. The change that can happen, you just kind of think, my gosh, who is this person? But I often feel that when I'm working with those people who have really come out of painful relationships, because it takes a lot, character assassination happens, and they can lose themselves completely. But I also have this kind of idea that, which is really controversial, no mistakes. It's an opportunity for growth. Something happened that seduced you into a relationship where you lost yourself, where on some level you break down to break through. Hopefully, doesn't always have a happy ending, right? But that actually there's a possibility for you to take a look at what was so huge about your heart that it was innocent and naive and actually was seduced in a particular way. What was it that was unmet? What were you looking for outside of yourself? Those externalized standards that you put and you gave to someone else, because the dynamic happens between two people. It's not just one. Yes, it's painful to see it when you are actually hurting on the side of what we're calling the victim, but actually, what was the part you played? And it sounds harsh, because I'm not saying, hey, I went out there to be abused. That's not what I'm saying. But you got tangled in something. And this is an opportunity for you to really find your own inner strength and empowerment, so that you're not disempowered and played with in such a way. It's such a huge topic, isn't it? We could go from all the different facets. I have all kinds of clients popping in from both sides.
Yeah, we get a lot of examples in our heads. And from what you're saying, I'm getting the sense of putting myself in this position where I become the victim of the relationship. I also lack in seeing who I am, and or seeing my own capacity, my own potential for creating my life. So I would like transfer the authority of deciding over my life from father and mother to, you know, like all the people who have been the authorities in my life, to a relationship, and at some point it needs to, some awareness needs to come in which I see myself as the creator, myself as the driver of my own life car in a way. And that matches with the other distortion from the narcissist, which is like not being seen. And so to have all these people looking up to me feeds in my narcissistic traits in a way. So it's like a good match.
Yes. Yes.
To which I very much feel that group work has a lot of is a very fertile field for that kind of healing to happen. I think you were talking about this, Talib, about the creating the space of being seen and having the possibility to be exposed, because the three of us work individually with people, which is a lot of healing happening, but then the field of group is a total different scenario for experiencing different aspects and for experiencing receiving attention and receiving feedback in all kinds of ways, which I think is a big plus on healing this one. Don't you think so?
Absolutely. I mean, that's, as I was saying, it comes back to that kind of that the need for the mirroring, you know. I think that's, and also the accountability that happens in group work, where you start seeing how, again, I repeat that, how the behavior is playing out, you know, and it's a different dynamic where you start getting exposed by your peers, or getting exposed in a good way. There's that. It's one-on-one, has a beauty to it, but when you're mirrored by many different people, you know, it's something happens inside where you start seeing, well, okay, it opens up a different curiosity about seeing myself, you know. So, and I think that's powerful about group work. Yeah.
I agree. I think the group work brings so many beautiful, and I'm going to say essential qualities. There's a trust that happens, which is crucial. There's a sense of safety that is evoked. And I think when we're working with such painful, because it's painful, you know, many people, I think narcissists also, they get a hard rap. And I understand some of their behaviors are really kind of quite punishing and threatening, but also it's driven by pain and misery, right? And I know that most narcissists, when they're in their inflated phase and everything is going well, they might not make it into a group room or into a clinical setting. But eventually, when the collapse comes and everything that they've acquired actually still brings misery and emptiness, and things start falling apart, then we do see them entering, into the therapeutic arena. But I think in the group, what actually we offer by coming together with that real love of the truth is the holding capacity, which brings a bigness, which is bigger than just the individual. And actually, there's also I'm going to say the divine, the spiritual component, which is really bigger than inflation, and it's real. And it brings that holding capacity so that actually a safety can happen and vulnerability is actually embraced. And that is where we can see the cracks and the beautiful transformations that are possible. Because often when we're looking at the unmet needs, we haven't been held by something bigger. Sometimes the narcissist has had to grow up so super fast, has become its own parent, his own parent. And in that space, really hasn't had, like you said, Talib, the mirroring, the reflection, the healthy validation. And actually, they lose trust with people, because actually they were betrayed, they were let down, they were rejected. And in that group setting, there is a holding space that is beyond the personality, beyond the individual vision and view. And so in that place, something bigger can emerge.
It's been said that narcissists don't seek therapy or help because they don't really trust other than themselves. And you just mentioned that if they will search when things go wrong. But then what do you see that inspired that kind of trust? Because you brought this word vulnerability in, which I think is very much a key in dealing with narcissism, is like the daring to go there into the vulnerability. What do you see that can inspire trust in this person who's so identified with this narcissistic wound, like to inspire an invitation to maybe consider taking a step into allowing vulnerability?
You mean once they've entered the therapeutic arena?
Or maybe even to dare to go there?
That's where I think it's a little tricky. Because of course we all know that in order to have help we need to want it, right? And I don't think in a narcissistic injury or whatever we're calling narcissism that they think there's actually something wrong with them initially. So I think something chaotic, crisis has happened in their life and they enter into the space where actually it's so miserable and that they're touching something so deep and so painful that a collapse has happened. I've seen that recently, where actually everything that the person has put into place, from the beautiful, in this case it was a man, from the beautiful women to the money to the career to amazing children, and it just wasn't hitting it. And something happened, they get found out in doing certain controlling, dominating, malicious behaviors, and actually they're tired, they're exhausted themselves. It just cannot run any further. And actually at that point, something inside, so painful, says, hey, I need help. I need to look at this. I'm willing to look at this. But that's, sometimes that's a real deep crack that's required. And then in the healing space of a group room, it's that kind of feeling that I can trust in this space. And vulnerability happens. You don't make vulnerability happen. So I think there's a few ingredients. The safety, narcissists will test you. They will test your capacities. They will de-skill you. They will really see through you. Such incredible qualities, laser sharp precision to see if you're a fraud or not, because you can't bullshit a bullshitter, right? They know their stuff. And so there's a holding and a solidity that I think that they look for. And in the group room, there is that, especially if there's an integrity and a space that's being created, which is professional, which experts in their place, they know what they're talking about, and they hold that certain space, and actually something softens. So beautiful to see. Gosh, I get excited. I can see all of the things like kind of emerging, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And likewise, I would ask what you see about the person who is being in a relationship with somebody that they find to be narcissistic, or that they are having this suffering really from this relationship of being abused or not seen, and what could inspire a change for this person, for this position?
You want to go, Talib?
Yeah, I think it's I think it really struggles with boundaries. You know, I think people, when they're in that, to really find their inner authority, to connect with boundaries again, and that kind of self-respect, that they're able to trust themselves, because many times they've been so deteriorated by the attack or the manipulation of that behavior from the other, that they doubting themselves. They don't find that kind of inner value that they say, I have the right to have boundaries, I have inner value. And then it's almost like that sense of loss of the right to set boundaries, or the right to exist, or the right to have. And so it's so much that I love that in Path of Love, many times it's almost like that rebuilding of that inner authority, of the right to exist, even, that many times gets depleted when you've been in a kind of a narcissistic relationship. That kind of sense of, do I really have the right to exist, and what I feel and what I need is so much many times doubted. And in that sense of, therefore, inability to set boundaries, because boundaries have that protective element, that what needs protection has value inside myself. And many times, therefore, it's like that, I can only protect and stand up for that which I have that has real value. And that is very much challenged in a relationship that has been in a narcissistic. It's almost like the person, so it's like recreating that connection with something stronger. And many times I think that also is something, because it's such a deep sense of unworthiness that comes with that, you know, and that people really have doubted themselves from such a core level that it's very difficult to find something that they can really lean into, that they can trust again, that they know what they can stand for. And I think that's something powerful that happens in Path of Love with people, where they kind of have that inner authority coming on track again, where they can set boundaries, or they learn how their healthy aggression is actually creating a certain sense of, I have the right to be, I have the right to stand up for myself, I have the right to feel what I'm feeling, and I'm not being doubted by the other. I'm not being diminished by the other.
It's amazing how what you both said, like you're answering about both separate positions, and it's all coming together to a point of the person needs to feel safe to let go of what she is used to using as an attitude towards life. because, if I'm projecting the authority on someone else, it's because for some reason I find that safe. That person will take care of me. So to let go of that attitude of trusting that person, whoa, that's also a courageous movement. To can I really rely on myself? But also from the narcissistic perspective, it's like, I have built this whole mask around me and it works. Don't let me to drop it. Don't tell me to drop it now. It's like both need a lot of feeling safe in order to take that step, I feel like.
Yeah.
So
and one of my hopes in like us doing these kinds of talks is that actually it brings to the arena that you can act fast, because there is something about getting involved in relationships, especially if you're on the victim side, let's say, where it's crazy making. You can lose your sense of self very easily, and there's the gaslighting, and we're questioning ourselves, and we get lost and trying to work it out. Is it true? Is it not true? But as soon as there's that kind of detection inside of yourself, something's off, that it's good to act there and then. Otherwise, there's something about a merger that happens, and you kind of lost inside each other. It's like, what is true? What is real? And because you are asking, how do I know when I actually need to look at this or get help? When you lose that sense of yourself, there's so many different kind of symptoms, whatever the right word is, different kind of angles that you got to pay attention to. So that's where it comes back to where we started from, where loving ourselves, taking care of ourselves, taking ourselves seriously in a healthy way is crucial to really targeting being seduced into something really fast and furiously.
And we have been talking a lot about one-on-one relationship, but now listening to you, it makes me think also of group relationships, like following leaders in this structure of a narcissist perspective, and like really giving the whole power away and being so lost in that process. That's been also a lot exposed recent years of, abuse of power by religious leaders and all kinds of different sects and places. That's all part of this equation as well. And it's not an easy place to come out from. Whoa. Yeah. But I agree.
You could almost say that we're soaked in it, right? It's our socialized order. It's what we're used to. It's that kind of individual, capitalistic, kind of solution focused, we could call it patriarchal if we want, way of being. And actually, it takes courage. I think that's what we're bringing. It takes boldness and courage to stand up and sometimes stand against the majority view, the socialized, conditioned view. It's like really on some level coming back to self before we can do the social, before we can do the global. It's like know thyself, really watching what is mine. Have I questioned these values, these beliefs, these perspectives? Do they actually belong to me? Because we really are seeped in particular values that most of us haven't even questioned. So courage, boldness, really required.
Wow, it's a big topic, isn't it?
Yeah.
Since an hour here, so since we're coming to the end of this hour, is there anything that you feel important to add? And then I think we tell people a little bit of what is this path of love that we've been talking about. But before that, do you still want to share something about the topic? Final message.
I think it takes a lot of courage to navigate in these waters, on both sides. And it's really something to reach out and ask for help, to seek for help, to seek for community, to seek for healing, on both sides of it. And I think that's such a human part of the journey in many ways, of really recognizing like, wow, I'm stuck in this and I need help and I can't get out by myself. And to find those resources today, and the world feels so big and fast, and it's so powerful in many ways of that longing to be together, to that longing to belong, and that longing to fit in, and the longing for love and sex and real contact, and that neediness, that when our needs are not being met around that, and that to really rediscover ourself in that is really something. I find that it's such an important part of the human journey on such a deep level, of that in us that has that deep need for bond and contact and connection, and that and the search in that, anyway, I don't find the word so much today, but I find that it's such an important topic, really.
I think one of our reasons of coming here was really in advocating on many levels the potential of inner work, of really the truth and authenticity and the boldness and courage and strength to really live up to that. And I think when we find ourselves in regurgitation, in repetition, in stuckness, in familiarity, in comfort zones, and then we find ourselves exhausted and it's almost banging our head off a brick wall, it's time to really take a look, take accountability and take responsibility, because that's what we do have. The wounding that we all went through was not our fault, but our healing is definitely our responsibility. And I think really, whether we find ourselves in whatever we're labeling as narcissism or trauma or whatever wounds, it's a painful way to live. And there is another way, but it's a lifestyle. It's not that we're in any way saying that this is overnight kind of healing and then everything's a-okay. It's a way of living. And I think we are passionate for sure in the path of love, in the work that we do for growth, for potential, for transformation. And I think the time is now, rather than recreating what we already know. What does it take to stand sometimes in the unknown, sometimes in the cracks, and allow direct experience and emergence to come through us, and find like-minded hearts and souls that really want the same, because we're out there, right?
Oh, like-minded hearts and souls, the
Beauty.
two of you are beautiful people. It's so touching to hear you and to feel your passion and your love for this work. It's a lot of fun always to hang out and chat. And so I hope this helps a lot of people to take courage to look into a bit beyond the judgment. It's not like the narcissists are the bad people and then there's the good people. It's a lot of wounded people on either side, and it's such a gift to take care of this wound, and it's possible and it's urgent. The planet is urging it. Our personal lives, our collective life on the planet is urging that we start creating a world where there is more fulfillment of what is true in the children that are coming through, rather than ignoring and neglecting. So let's hope.
When you say it's urgent, there's something beautiful about recognizing when we feel urgency, we need to slow down. and not get pulled into the panic and the desperation, but the slowing down creates that space, right? And opening, and maybe that takes us into what Path of Love is about, or maybe we say a little bit about our love for slowing down and entering the path of love.
Already doing it, so go ahead.
Yeah.
But it's something, like you're saying, that's slowing down, you know. It also touches me, the not bypassing these dynamics that we experience inside, and that we, if we're really honest, that most of us experience, you know, being in difficult relationships and struggling in relationships and seeking for love. And I think so much of, like you're saying, Abby, just
feel ourselves on such a deep level, on such a human level, and to face ourselves and really own that part that actually does need healing, that does need support, that does need contact. And I think that's such a gift, and so needed today. So needed in the pain of separation that is so quick in how we isolate, in that showing ourselves and being afraid to love, you know, to really afraid of really opening up our heart again and being hurt again. And I think that's one of the most strongest pulls inside, you know. We're really searching for that connection. And like you said before, Abby, also that not just the human love or the man-woman love or the intimate love, but also that sacred love, the connection to the divine, the connection to source again. You know, so much about the relationships that I experienced, that a certain moment goes beyond the need for intimacy. It becomes a need for connection to something bigger, beyond even relationship, that we're really searching for. That I find something special about Path of Love, honestly, because so much about it, the pain of separation, of feeling not included by the other, but a bigger pain of separation of not feeling like I belong here, you know, that I'm included by something bigger. And I think that's such a almost even deeper drive inside us, that need to belong to something bigger, that calls, you know, that's longing. That I think that's Path of Love talks to so much to that longing in us as humans, that maybe even starts with these dynamics we're talking about today, of the narcissistic or the distortion of the pain of separation, but even more so that deep longing to make a union with something bigger than that divided yeah, it touches me. It touches me. It brings me again and again back to that place inside myself that also longs so much for that connection to something bigger, you know. It's not so easy to put into words, actually, but it's
I feel that, or I feel that in myself, Talib, where for me it's like that real deep longing to come home. And that home feels like the absolute. It feels like just something bigger than the prescribed, than the regurgitated, the socialized, the particular way that we're told to be. There's something that's so much more subtle, and then the words do loosen, you know, actually. Of course, lots to say, but I know we need to pull it together.
We're going to be disconnected from Instagram very soon, so I just want to thank everybody who came in. There was many comments that I could not read through because it's too many screens, and so I'm sorry if there was any questions or any comments. And you can always direct message us on Instagram. We try to answer you if you have questions. And thank you for the hearts and the messages that I see there, but I can't really see who's sending it. But beautiful, you're there. So, and then just on a practical level, because we've been talking about this path of love and so much from the heart, but what we're talking is really a 7-day retreat that is happening in different countries of the world. And we will leave in the description on YouTube here and also in our channel on the Instagram, the link to the site with the upcoming retreats possible for you to book and check and have the whole experience that we're talking about. Anything else we need to say, guys, that I haven't said yet? Huh?
Love you guys.
Love you too.
Yeah,
I love
really enjoy to hear you guys share. It's wonderful, really. Thank you guys so much.
Thank you. We'll have more of this, I feel, at some point. So thank you, everyone.
Yes.
Bye.
Much love. Bye-bye.
Okay.
You're watching an Oxygen Advantage exercise.